living in room 113. A true horror story shared by our subscriber. I want you to stop whatever you are doing right now. If you are lying in bed, sit up. If the lights are off, turn one on. And if you are alone in a building right now, I need you to listen very carefully to what I am about to tell you. Because what happened to Sarah was not a nightmare. It was not her imagination. It was not stress from school or exhaustion from studying too late. What happened to Sarah in that boarding school dormitory on the 3rd floor of Whitmore Hall has no rational explanation. She sent me her story 6 weeks ago. A long message, detailed, the kind of message someone writes at 3 in the morning because they cannot sleep and they need someone else to know what they experienced. When I finished reading it the first time, I went back and read it again, and then I checked every lock in my apartment. This is her story, in her words, as close as I can give it to you. And I promise you, by the time this is over, you will never look at a school hallway the same way again. Part 1. Whitmore Hall. Sarah was 16 when her parents enrolled her at Ashford Academy in rural Connecticut. Prestigious private school, old money, old buildings, the kind of place with a Latin motto carved above the front entrance and portraits of headmasters dating back to 1887 lining the main corridor. She did not want to go. She had friends at her public school in Ohio. She had her room, her dog, her neighborhood. But her parents had worked for years to afford the tuition, and she understood what it meant to them. So she packed her things, said goodbye to everything familiar, and drove 6 hours east to a place she had never seen. Whitmore Hall was the oldest dormitory on campus. 4 floors, red brick, ivy growing up the eastern wall so thick it looked like the building was being slowly consumed. The windows on the upper floors were tall and narrow, and the glass in them was old enough to have that slight waviness that made everything outside look like it was underwater. Sarah was assigned to room 113, 3rd floor, end of the hall, the last door before the emergency exit stairwell. Her roommate was a girl named Jess who had been to Ashford for 2 years and knew everything about everyone. Jess was friendly and loud and exactly the kind of person Sarah needed in an unfamiliar place. Within an hour of moving in, Jess had introduced Sarah to half of the floor, shown her where the good shower stores were, explained which RAs were strict and which looked the other way, and given her a complete social map of the school. What Jess did not tell her, not that first day, was anything about room 113. That conversation came 3 weeks later, and by then, Sarah had already started to notice things. Part 2. The small things. It started with sounds. Ashford Academy was an old building. Old buildings make noise. Sarah knew this. Pipes tick and groan. Floors settle. Wind finds gaps in window frames and whistles through them. She told herself all of this, and she believed it. For a while, the sound she kept hearing was different. It came from the wall behind her bed, the wall that connected room 113 to the emergency stairwell. A slow, rhythmic sound, not mechanical, not the building settling, knocking. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks, pause, always 3. Always the same wall, always between 2 and 3 in the morning. Sarah mentioned it to Jess after the 4th night.
Jess went very quiet. Sarah asked if she had heard it too. Jess said, "Yeah, I hear it sometimes. It is probably just the pipes." But the way she said it, The way she did not quite meet Sarah's eyes when she said it. Sarah filed it away. Did not push, but she filed it away. The second thing was the smell. Room 113 had a smell that came and went with no explanation. Not a bad smell exactly. Sweet almost, like old flowers, roses that had been sitting in a vase for too long. It was strongest near the window on Sarah's side of the room. She checked under the bed, behind the radiator, looked for anything that could explain it. Nothing. The smell would appear in the middle of the night and be completely gone by morning, as if it had only ever existed in the dark. The third thing happened at the end of the third week. Sarah awoke at 2:40 in the morning. No alarm, no sound that she could identify. She just opened her eyes, wide awake, the way you wake up when some part of your brain has decided something is wrong. The room was dark. Jess was asleep in her bed across the room, a dark shape under her blankets. Sarah lay still and looked at the ceiling, and then she looked at the window. There was a girl standing at the window, still facing the glass, looking out at the dark campus below. Sarah's heart stopped. She opened her mouth, and then the figure turned around, and Sarah saw it was Jess, standing at the window in her pajamas, eyes open, completely still, staring at nothing. Sarah sat up and said her name quietly. Jess blinked, looked around the room like she was confused about where she was. Then she went back to bed without a word. In the morning, Sarah asked if she remembered getting up. Jess said she had not gotten up, said she had slept through the night, did not remember anything, and she changed the subject so fast that Sarah did not get the chance to say anything else. Part 3. What Jess finally told her. It was a Thursday night, nearly a month into the semester. The two of them were studying in the room, both of them procrastinating on an essay neither wanted to write. Jess had been quieter than usual all day, and then, out of nowhere, Jess put her pen down and said, "I need to tell you something about this room." Sarah closed her laptop. Jess said, "I should have told you before you moved in. I thought about it, but I did not know how to say it without sounding crazy, and I kept telling myself it was nothing, that it was just an old building and my imagination." Sarah waited. Jess said, "The girl who had your bed before you, her name was Claire. She was here for one semester our freshman year. She was not okay by the end of it. She started having these episodes, sleepwalking, waking up screaming. She stopped eating. She told the school counselor that someone was visiting her at night, standing at the foot of her bed and watching her sleep. Sarah felt something cold move through her chest. Jess kept going. She said the school called Claire's parents, said it was a mental health crisis. Anxiety, they said, the pressure of academics. They sent her home in November. She never came back. Sarah asked if anything had happened before Claire. Jess was quiet for a moment. Then she said, low voice, "I looked into it. Last year, after Claire left, I went back through old yearbooks in the library. I found out that this room has had more turnover than any other room in Whitmore Hall. Girls requesting transfers, girls dropping out, going back as far as the records go. There was one year in the 90s when the room was left completely empty, no explanation in any official document, just empty." Sarah asked what Jess thought was in the room.
Jess looked at the wall behind Sarah's bed. She said very quietly, "I do not know what it is, but I know it is more interested in your side of the room than mine.
and I know that it gets worse in October. It was October 3rd. Part 5. October gets worse. Jess was right. October got worse. Sarah started having the dreams, always the same. She was in Whitmore Hall, but it was wrong. The hallway was the right shape, but the proportions were off. The ceiling too high, the doors too narrow, the lights flickering and yellow and wrong. And she was walking down the hallway toward 113, and she did not want to reach it. Every part of her in the green did not want to reach that door, but her legs kept moving, one step after another, getting closer. And just before she reached the door, she would look down and see the shadow of someone standing on the other side, feet visible in the gap beneath the door, standing right there, right on the other side, waiting. And then she would wake up, gasping. Every night, the same dream, getting further each time, getting closer to the door. By the second week of October, she stopped sleeping more than 3 hours at a time. By the third week, something else started happening. She would wake in the night and find herself standing, not at the window like Jess, not at her desk, at the door to the room. Hand on the doorknob. She had no memory of getting up, no memory of crossing the room. She would simply find herself there, hand on the cold metal knob, facing the door with no understanding of what she had been about to do. Open it. She had been about to open it. She started sleeping with the door locked, put the key around her wrist on a piece of string. It helped. For 3 nights, it helped. On the 4th night, she woke up at 3:13 in the morning, standing in the hallway outside room 113. The door was closed and locked behind her. She was on the outside. She did not have the key. The key was gone from around her wrist. She was standing in the empty dark hallway of the 3rd floor of Whitmore Hall at 3 in the morning in her pajamas. And the hallway was not empty. Part 6, the hallway. Sarah told me that the moment she realized she was in the hallway, she also realized she was not alone in it. She could not see anything at first. The hallway lights were on their nighttime setting, dim, just enough to see shapes. And at the far end of the hallway, past all the doors where the hallway turned, and there was nothing except the old wooden wall with the fire extinguisher mounted on it. Something was standing there. The shape of a girl. White dress. The kind of dress nobody wore anymore. Old-fashioned. The kind you might see in a photograph from the 1950s. Standing at the end of the hallway, completely still, facing Sarah. Sarah said that her whole body understood before her brain did. She felt it in her legs first, a complete failure of her muscles to do anything at all. She was standing there in the dim hallway, looking at this thing at the end of the hall, and she could not move. She said it was not that the figure was horrifying to look at, it was not grotesque, it was not monstrous, it was the stillness that was unbearable. Nothing moves like that. No living person stands that still. No living person has that quality of absolute perfect motionlessness. Like a photograph, like something that exists in a different kind of time than the rest of the world. Sarah stood there for what she believes was about 30 seconds, and then the figure moved. One step toward her, slow, then another, and Sarah's legs came back to life.
She turned and ran to the nearest door that she knew was unlocked. The bathroom at the end of the hall. pushed through it, sat on the floor in the corner between the wall and the last stall, and did not move until she heard the sounds of other girls waking up for morning classes. She never heard footsteps follow her into the bathroom. She never heard anything at all after she ran. But she said that sitting on that bathroom floor in the dark, she had the overwhelming sense that whatever was in the hallway was right on the other side of the bathroom door, not trying to get in, just standing there, waiting for her to come out. Part 7. The school finally talks. Sarah went to the administration office the next morning and demanded to know the history of 113. She was told there was nothing to know. Old building, standard room. She asked to speak to someone who had worked at the school for a long time. She asked specifically about any incidents in Whitmore Hall going back decades. They stalled, redirected, offered to connect her with the school counselor. She pushed harder. Finally, an older administrator, a woman named Mrs. Garrett, who had worked at Ashford for over 30 years, pulled Sarah aside in the hallway after the meeting. She spoke quietly and quickly. She said, "I should not be telling you this, but I remember 1987. I was young, just starting here. There was a student. Her name does not matter. She was on the 3rd floor of Whitmore Hall. She had a breakdown in October. The things she said before they took her home, about the hallway, about something watching her from her own closet, about standing at her door at night and not knowing how she got there." Sarah asked what happened to the student. Mrs. Garrett said she went home and recovered, was fine eventually, but she never returned to Ashford. Sarah asked if anyone knew what was in the room. Mrs. Garrett was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "There was a student who died in that building, before my time, before most people's time here in the 1950s. A girl. She died in the dormitory under circumstances that the school never fully explained publicly. The official record says it was an accident. But the people who were here then, the older staff, the ones who are all gone now." She stopped. Sarah said, "What did they say?" Mrs. Garrett looked down the hallway toward Whitmore Hall, visible through the window. She said, "They said she never left, that she stayed behind in that building because she did not understand that she was supposed to go, and that every October when the light changes and the nights get long, she starts looking for company." She straightened up, composed herself. She said, "I would request a room transfer if I were you." Sarah requested the transfer that afternoon. She was told there were no available rooms until the semester ended in December. Part 8. The Last Night. Sarah decided she was not going to let herself be afraid anymore. She had 6 weeks left in that room. She was going to get through it. She was going to be logical. She was going to be strong. She lasted 4 days. On the 5th night, she woke at 3 in the morning to find the room filled with that smell, the old roses, the sweet, wrong smell that only came in the dark. It was stronger than it had ever been, almost overwhelming, and she felt it.
That presence. Not at the window, not at the door, not at the wall. In the room, between the 2 beds. Sarah did not open her eyes. She lay completely still, and she told herself over and over that there was nothing there, that she was imagining it, that she was tired and scared, and her brain was doing the rest. And then she heard breathing. Slow, even, deliberate, right there in the dark between the 2 beds. Not Jess. Jess was across the room. This was between them. Sarah lay there for a very long time.
She did not open her eyes. She did not move. She concentrated on keeping her own breathing slow and even, or not making a sound. Eventually, the smell faded. The breathing stopped. The presence lifted. Sarah lay awake until 7 in the morning when her alarm went off. She called her parents that day and told them she needed to come home. She told them it was a mental health crisis. She used those exact words because she knew it was the language that would make them act fast. She was home in Ohio 4 days later. She is okay. She is back in her public school with her friends and her dog and her neighborhood. She sleeps fine now, every night, deep and dreamless. But she told me one last thing before she ended her message. She said, "I still have the photograph, the one I found in the archive, the one with the figure in the white dress at the back of the hallway. I keep it in a folder in my desk drawer. I should throw it away. I know I should throw it away. But every time I go to do it, I open the drawer and the folder is already open, like someone has been looking at it. And the figure at the back of the photograph, she said it is closer than it was before. She said when she found the photograph in the archive, the figure was at the very end of the hallway, far away, small, easy to miss. Last week she looked at it again. The figure is now at the midpoint of the hallway, closer to the camera, closer to the girls in the foreground who do not know she is behind them. Sarah said she is not going to look at it again. She is going to keep the drawer closed, but she needed someone else to know, just in case. I have thought about Sarah's story every day since she sent it to me. I have thought about that photograph sitting in a drawer in Ohio and a figure in a white dress getting closer every time someone looks. I have thought about those girls in the archive box, named in the caption, smiling for the photographer, not one of them aware of what stood behind them in the shadows of that hallway. And I have thought about what Mrs. Garrett said, that she stayed behind because she did not understand she was supposed to go. Maybe that is the most frightening part of all of this. Not the knocking, not the hallway, not the breathing in the dark, but the idea that something can be so lost, so completely unaware that time has moved on without it, that it just keeps reaching out, keeps looking for connection, keeps moving closer to the people who can somehow feel it, looking for someone to finally acknowledge it, looking for someone to answer. Sarah never answered. I hope she keeps it that way. And if any of you out there have stayed somewhere that felt wrong in a way you could not explain, if you have woken up somewhere you do not remember walking to, if you have ever felt something in a dark room that you could not see, do not look, do not answer, and whatever you do, do not check the photograph. Sleep safe tonight and keep your drawers closed.